Hi there, my name's Keller, and today we're going to be talking about Nikola Tesla and his thoughts on the problem of increasing human energy, as well as the difference between Benjamin Franklin and Nikola Tesla's vision for mankind as it contrasted against those of Albert Einstein, both politically and technologically. But let's open with an ominous quote. And before I get started, I'll go ahead and mention that Tesla had a plan for infinite energy, for infinite power. So let's take a look and see what Tesla says regarding the problem of increasing human energy. One quote reads that he wrote at the turn of the 20th century in 1900 AD. Modern science says the sun is the past, the earth is the present, the moon is the future. From an incandescent mass we've originated, and into a frozen mass we shall turn. Merciless is the law of nature, and rapidly and irresistibly we are drawn to our doom. What a quote. What a sentiment and a thought. The sun is the past, the earth is the present where we live, the moon is our future, which is space exploration, etc. From an incandescent mass we've originated, from the Big Bang, from radiation of the sun's energy, into a frozen mass we shall turn, the extinction of the sun, extenuation of the sun. Merciless is the law of nature. We can't reason or outlaw the freezing of the sun, and rapidly we are drawn to our doom. Meaning that regardless of our own human life, the 100 years we may live, or 40 years for many, mankind as a civilization will perish without change, without advancement. So I will begin this with a writing that I have that I'll read, omitting some curse words just to make this a little bit more palatable to a wider audience. And because it's also important for children, and I don't think occasional cuss words kill them, but let's keep it plain. Okay. Now this is I'm not going to take stops along the way in this initial reading, but then I'll go back and explain it, because it's, frankly speaking, it's quite a knowledge dump, quite an assault of the mental capacities. So if you can tolerate it for a little bit, just go with me, and then I'll take many steps backwards to explain what's going on. And then later I'll get to Benjamin Franklin and Tesla's ideas of a better world and the purpose of technology in politics, as opposed to the ideas of Albert Einstein, which contrast immensely. Okay. For those curious of Tesla's free energy plan, it's actually quite ingenious. Allow me a little useless hype before getting to the point. Energy, and effectively all life, is sun-based. Oil is sun energy converted to trees, converted to oil. Hydrodams are water, converted to steam, converted to rain, converted to high-altitude ponds, converted to low-altitude flow. Plants, life itself, are plants converted to food, converted to animals, and animals are largely DNA, converted by radiation into variants, converted into evolution. However, think of this water equation mostly. Tesla was at the Niagara Falls when he created his first power generator, basically. This was a fundamental inspiration. Now think of two other devices, the Tesla valve and the Tesla coil. The Tesla valve is a system which uses the speed of flow against itself, causing gushing water to loop backwards, slowing the gush, using a series of offshoots. In action, it's amazing. Visually, it's a straight path. Yet, when an immense pressure is applied to one side, these twisted offshoots convert it into a trickle, never a full stop. Yet in the other direction, the flow continues like passing through water. A Tesla coil, however, is quite astounding. Musk has his battery, yet before that, Tesla made his own super battery, one capable of receiving unlimited amounts of energy, discharging excess and spikes, yet retaining a residual steady state of charge for a long time. You can think of a Tesla coil like an energy jam. In overflow, it spikes. In regulation, it drains. Side note, the fundamental regulator of a Tesla coil is a musical vibration of energy, bouncing it against itself, like the rocking and pushing of a tree. In the same way you can't push a tree down with one great push, neither could one store infinite energy with one great surge. Instead, you bounce the energy back and forth until the coil overloads and spikes, like the felling of a tree. Now keep these in mind. Where on earth do you have an infinite supply of energy? However, if one did, you'd have the perfect implements for accepting such power. A Tesla valve for regulation. A Tesla coil for storage. Unlike anything else known to man, these are designed to absorb infinite energy, not a steady state. Side note, there is also the Tesla flywheel generator, which I think is fairly commonly known, but also stores infinite amounts of movement and converts it as energy. Okay, one more piece of crux before mainlining some knowledge. Benjamin Franklin invented the lightning rod, and likewise, the ancients the pyramids. In both designs, you have the capability to create a really tall object and connect it to a really low place underneath Earth. For those that don't know, lightning rods go into the ground about as high as they go up, basically. Now let's think for a second. Earth is filled with heat and negative energy. The sky, water vapor friction, is filled with cold, positive energy. Osmosis means, should these two connect, a flow is created for balance. And should they remain far apart for a long time, a spike is created in lightning to assert a forcing balance, like a battery. For those that don't know, modern batteries are a positive charge attempting to connect to a negative charge, and it is this steady state flow producing power. Side note, this is what Tesla used via vibrations to create earthquakes, rocking Earth against Earth, like a baby to sleep. Now, for summation. His final invention was the Tesla Tower, a huge lightning rod in a location in which water vapor engaged in great friction in the mountain town of Colorado. Now imagine a power source which is not reliant upon water or other sources of mechanical visible wear, but is instead merely a huge metal conductor, osmosifying all the negative energy from Earth and all the positive energy from sky. Like these are things that dreams and nightmares are made of. One might suspect you get a spike of power so great that it fries everything in the surrounding area on planet Earth and fundamentally alters our ecosystem. It could be unstoppable. It could terrorize a village with great weather patterns so electromagnetic that they beg you to stop. All this was foreseen. As Tesla writes in his autobiography, like 30 pages, humorous, easy read, he says his inspiration for the electric motor was a vision of Earth spinning around an energy source, balancing said energy effortlessly while simultaneously creating a magnetic center through rapid, frictionless rotation, like a rhythmic wave. Let's simply imagine a lightning rod of absurd proportions, passing a flow into a Tesla valve, passing a power into a Tesla coil, passing a discharge into a power line, powering a city, a nation, a global planet. This is the dream of a Tesla tower. In his drawings, he drew 6 of them. Earth is some 400 miles high in atmosphere, and if these were proportionally correct, these objects were about 400 miles likewise, with a great current flowing across them at a space level. In effect, a giant battery. A giant battery connected via metallic towers, stabilized through space current transfer and Tesla valve-like systems, stored via water pumping or Tesla coils, and subsequently utilized by the coil or water discharge at a rate sufficient for human consumption. Some assert nearly 20% of the world's power is wasted through spiking and despiking, known as transformers, amplifying and de-amplifying. This is where Elon's batteries come in, greatly enhancing the world's power. However, Tesla had foreseen all. By 1915, the end game was plain. And perhaps the ancients who erected the pyramids knew it too. One day the Earth and similar objects will get converted into a power system, unlike anything one could imagine. A battery, a grid, stable force, worthy of the imagination of Tesla. Frictionless, infinite, perpetual, astonishing cosmic energy, captured, stored, and regulated for organic consumption. And now you've met Nikola Tesla, the American immigrant and prophet to our universe. I was pleased with that. Just kind of wrote that this morning to kind of share some of Tesla's thoughts. Now let's go into let's break down some of those things that I was talking about there. So let's start with a Tesla valve, so you can kind of see what I'm. Okay, there you go. That is a great. Google's going to take a minute. Okay, this is a great image. Which let's use this one. This is a great. Oh, it's a YouTube. It's not going to work. Let me go to images. Oh yeah, I'm on images. Okay. I'll use this example because this is hopefully. These ones aren't really kind of what a Tesla valve is meant to look like. It's much more a straight object as far as his design. So in this object, you have a straight path for water and current to flow. Yet, if you go this way backwards, then the current is at it's at a very quick rate. But if you go to the right in via this drawing, then some of the current would get caught in these little offshoots loops, and so if you accelerated with a great pace, these offshoots would flow backwards, stopping the flow of current. I have a straw somewhere. I could have found it, but you can buy a Tesla straw and you can blow, even though there's no direct stopping force. You blow in one direction through the Tesla straw and you can't move a piece of paper at the other end. And of course you twist it around and blow the opposite direction, and it works as a straw like normal. So it's a one-way valve, but it's never a full stop, and it uses the power source or the oncoming energy as the source of friction. So whereas with a normal valve that has a flapper, and subsequently you would need the metal flapper to be stronger than the flow of the power coming to it, in a Tesla valve, and in particular in a situation where you had spikes of electrons in such a way that you couldn't predict when they would come or react fast enough, these electrons would stop each other naturally through the use of a Tesla valve, all the while trickling down to the eventual bottom of the valve. So this is the basic of what some of these drawings are a little off because Tesla always drew it as a straight line rather than these curved things. But regardless, it all communicates the point. Let me think if I can. Maybe this will. I don't think I'll be able to pull this up in any sensible time for this video. I won't worry about it. But like, let me think if there's another way to describe this. Like just for talking purposes, imagine a lot of children all lined up running in one line, and then imagine 10% of the children are pushed to the side and told to run backwards for a little bit. So they wouldn't ultimately be able to run backwards before the mass pushed them forward. But as they turned backwards, they would create a blockage, they would create a disruption in the flow, and then this kind of disruption and this, if you do this continually over a long period of time, the forward moving mass of children would stop, and then it would start to trickle as opposed to kind of accelerate down a path. Likewise, the forward mass is unimpeded, and these offshoots would only capture a small bit of overflow initially. But as this kind of chaotic movement of children increased, then more and more would get sectioned off into these offshoots as it sort of pushes a batch of children into the offshoots, and thus the flow reduces to such a level that it's really quite difficult to understand just how absurdly effective this is, even though there is no stopping force and no restriction whatsoever on the straw. The straw is just a plain and simple clear straw in which energy and waves, energy could pass through directly, but through these little offshoots, then you get the effect of the Tesla valve. Now, another thing I mentioned is the Tesla coil. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Tesla coil, and it looks something like this, where it's constantly spiking, and people know it. People know it through photos like this. Some people say this is like photoshopped. I don't know, but people know it through photos like this, where you see spikes discharging constantly, and they sort of think like some people have suggested that a Tesla coil is used to like shoot rays and kill people. It's not really what the purpose of it was, or it's not the purpose as it was imagined by Nikola Tesla. The need for death rays was not his driving purpose. So a Tesla coil, an overcharge. So as I mentioned previously, you can think of it like dams. So dams and reservoirs are used to generate power for a city at a steady rate of flow. However, should rainfall be overly abundant and the need for power not equalize or balance to the flow of rain, then you discharge water, either dumping it out unceremoniously, or it goes over the top of the dam, as a different method of releasing this excess energy. In a Tesla coil, you have a very similar type of movement of energy and power, but it's all electromagnetic. Nothing is, in almost everything Tesla designed, he always designed it understanding the invisible power rather than focusing on oil. He did enjoy hydropower, but oil, water, and all these other things that were sources of friction. He wanted to do things which reduced friction to allow infinite transfer of power and minimize mechanical wear. So with a regular battery, or the ones that we are familiar with today, after whatever 10 years they wear out and they have to be replaced, creating a need for consistent mechanical production. Yet a Tesla coil, which stores energy as well, as far as I know, there's no wearing down process of a Tesla coil. So when it overflows, when it spikes, it creates these rays, which people, of course, are so familiar, for those who are kind of fascinated by Nikola Tesla and science and discovery. So now this Tesla coil, the way that it stores energy is also, I think, absurdly ingenious. And this is part of his method in creating alternating current as opposed to DC current. So in direct current, which is, I think most of your devices actually use direct current. But if you use direct current to transfer power over a long distance, such as power lines, then in direct current, you create an absurdly high spike of power at the source, which disseminates and becomes just diffused with the atmosphere and the things that it passes through, and hopefully sufficient power arrives at your final object without frying everything in the path. Alternating current, which was best utilized by Nikola Tesla. I don't believe he invented it per se, but he invented how to use it in a functional way serviceable by man. In alternating current, you have a wave. Power is transmitted like a musical rhythm, boom, 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 like the waves of the ocean. Is a great example. So the power is transmitted in this musical wave, this oceanic wave, and thus you can sort of amplify power without creating the need for a massive initial spike and a minimal discharge at an end point. With this rhythmic system, this vibrational system, you can prevent the overheating of your initial source while providing a consistent, usable level of energy for the end point. And I think less power gets discharged or diffused into the atmosphere. Oh yeah, less power gets discharged and diffused into the atmosphere because, like, numerically, to travel a mile, you might need 1,000 powers at the initial source to get 1 power at the end point, whereas with alternating current, you can use 10 power at the initiating point, which creates less diffusion of power, and then to get 1 power at the end point. So there's still some diffusion of power and wasted energy. However, since you no longer have to create this massive spike, yet you're able to push the power along through your electromagnetic waves, then you prevent the overheating of the elements, the electrocution of wood and metal and plastic, and you better utilize energy. Now with a Tesla coil, it uses an alternating vibrotic system where the energy is pushed up through the middle point here, and then it eventually goes through this circular spike at the top. Now when it hits this circular spike, it will naturally come back down to the middle point. So if you just used one surge of power, it would go up, straight down, up, straight down. Yet, through the mind of Nikola Tesla, we can imagine a situation where we push the power up with a force, and then as it comes down, timed correctly, we then and only then create a new surge of power, bouncing it against itself. So this would be like two waves crashing in the ocean. And then we could further imagine if these two waves were constantly crashing in the ocean, one wave one source of the waves which is infinite via our power generator, and the other source of wave which overflows whenever the coil at the top receives too much energy. You can see how you can balance this power generation against a top coil, increasingly bouncing more and more power to that top coil, charging the system. And in overcharge, it spikes out, and should your power generating source, should that die down, then you could discharge it naturally through this rhythmic bouncing of waves. And that's a brief summation of the ingenuity or initial thought processes that went into the creation of a Tesla coil. So when we think about a Tesla coil and a Tesla valve, the most relevant aspects as preferred or discussed by Tesla, the most relevant aspects is that there's no friction whatsoever, or very, very little friction. It can handle invisible objects as opposed to the visible mechanical objects that our mind sees and touches every day. And a Tesla valve can regulate an ungodly, unlimited source of energy, and a Tesla coil can store an ungodly, unlimited source of power. Now, a lot of people could imagine, or could not imagine, well, where can you get an unlimited source of power? And before I get into that, let me show what a Tesla flywheel looks like, so that I'm not sure if I'll find a good. Okay, yeah, great. Maybe it might be called Tesla flywheel generator. I think it's just called a Tesla generator, but okay, none of these are going to show what I want for this purpose, but that's fine. I'll just describe it to you, and then you can sort of imagine it. Now you can find little YouTube videos that go into this in great depth. None of these pictures that I see are going to communicate it to you, but I'll describe it briefly. So in a Tesla flywheel, it's a I'll keep looking for sources while I talk. Flywheel generator. In a Tesla flywheel, in a generator. So in a, in a typical generator, you have, I'm not sure if I mentioned in this video, I went shopping for my girlfriend at a hippie shop, and she doesn't really like these kind of bright clothes or whatever, and I normally wear normal clothes, and I was like, okay, well, I'll go ahead and get me something, vibrant. So I went ahead and did that. So in a Tesla flywheel, or a typical generator, you might have water going down, which spins the turbine, which is surrounded by a series of magnets. The turbine has one type of magnet. This is an electromagnetic generator. The turbine has one type of magnet. Let's call it positive energy, negative energy, and then it's surrounded by positive energy magnets in the encasement. And the water spins the turbine. The turbine in turn spins these magnets. And then the rotation of the positive magnet, as the positive magnets rotate and the negative magnets are fixed in place, you create a transfer of electrical energy, or the generation of energy. Now, with a Tesla flywheel generator, what I'm calling it, or Tesla generator as it's most commonly said, I should note this is the basic concept for the electric motor. The electric motor is where instead of using water to spin the turbine, you utilize the reverse. You power up these fixed in place magnets, which spin without any friction whatsoever, which spins the object which is capable of turning, or the turbine. And it's the spinning of this turbine which powers an electric razor, which powers an electric saw. Basically, literally everything you use in life is fundamentally, every electronical device is fundamentally the result of the Tesla electronic generator, or motor, electronic motor. So, and it's this absence of friction that allows the revolutions of 10,000 times per minute or whatever. It's this absence of friction which allows these devices to last, 50 years without wear and tear. And it's this absence of friction and the heat subsequently that would have been generated from the friction, which was the driving force for Tesla. Now, with the Tesla flywheel generator, in his system, again, superbly ingenious. You have water coming down, and instead of twisting along a turbine, creating friction and wear in the normal fashion, the water comes down and splashes upon a flat disc. And this flat disc has holes on the outside of it to allow the water to pass through. And then as it goes down to the next level, it lands upon another flat disc, which again has holes on the outside allowing the water to pass through. And then you end up with such a situation where you have 20 flat discs stacked on top of each other, and as the water comes down, it lands on these flat discs, and it's passing through seemingly effortlessly at first. But as it does so, these discs twist, and they create a spinning pattern. And as these discs spin, it creates a gravitational pull, or I'm forgetting the force now, but anyways, I'll call it gravitation. It creates a cylindrical, whatever. Anyways, it creates a gravitational pull to the outside of the object. So as the flow increases, these discs increase with speed, pushing this water outward, and eventually getting to effectively an unlimited number of revolutions per minute on these discs, as they have incredibly little friction. And it's mostly the cylindrical force. I'm using the term wrong, but it's this outside pushing force which causes these discs to spin, in which attracts the water to shove toward the edges and regulate the speed at which it comes down. And that is the Tesla flywheel generator. So again, with the Tesla electronic motor, with the Tesla valve, with the Tesla coil, with the Tesla flywheel generator, all these things, the primary driving inspiration for all these things was how to create devices without friction, without heat, which could regulate infinite power and so forth. So now let's go into the final concept, or one of the last concepts that we should understand. I'm spelling this all wrong. Before we get into Tesla's vision. So a lightning rod, which was, as far as I know, first designed by Benjamin Franklin in the dawn of the New World and so forth, when imaginations were allowed to run wild and people were not confined to the government school systems, hampering their imaginations and minds. He had this conception of energy. And he had this idea of, as he noticed, tall buildings were more frequently struck by lightning than short buildings. He had this idea of making a very tall rod pointed to the sky, or a lightning rod. Now there's another section to the lightning rod of equal importance, which is the grounding rod. Now some people might be aware of this, but this is instrumental to the success of the lightning rod. So with the grounding rod, you recognize that it is not merely height which attracts lightning, but the negative energy found in the earth, or the discharging of this energy into the earth as a way to dump the excess of power presented by the sky. So this thought process of connecting earth to sky, effectively pioneered by Benjamin Franklin. Perhaps the ancients of the pyramids did something similar. This connection of earth to sky is what allows the lightning rod to be a success. And it's also relevant to know, for those who don't know, and it is important to recognize this, that when Benjamin Franklin designed his lightning rod within his own house, he absorbed some of this power and used it to jingle objects and power some of the devices within his house. So Franklin understood the concept of either storing power or utilizing this excess energy in order to create mechanical improvements. Now it's noted that he did this, and he had all these pots and pans rattling throughout his house. And while he's away in England doing his ambassadorship to promote the cause of America, these frequent rattlings frustrated his wife, and she disconnected them to prevent the pots and pans just jingling all the freaking time. Okay. And it's also worthy to note, when it came to calming the seas of the ocean, Franklin had the concept, and he did this as a jokester. He did this for amusement. He had oil within a giant staff, and in order to impress people and to, show his great power or to bumfuddle them, he would make little proclamations where he'd stand up and he would say, Okay, now I'm going to tame the waters. Now I'm going to tame the waters. And so then he would take his staff, he would point it at the water, probably, knowing Franklin, he'd probably say some magical commandments like ooga booga booga booga, and he would push a little button on his staff, releasing the oil into the water. And when this oil goes upon the water, it naturally, the positives and the negatives, the positives go down and the negatives go up, and a small bit of oil and a small staff would be sufficient to spread over across a big pond of water. And as these positive negative charges unified and stabilized over water, it eliminated the friction caused by wind. And it is this friction and this transference of positive negative energy which scoops up the water via this positive negative energy and creates these waves. And by spreading oil across water, which Franklin understood in 1750, which he understood by 1750, that one could use oil to stabilize the electromagnetic currents and stop waves, and seemingly perform miraculous events. But he also, I'm not sure if it was actually Leonardo da Vinci who created devices for walking upon water. So these inventors are constantly trying to take old myths and legends and find mechanical ways to recreate them. Leonardo da Vinci creating these shoes for walking upon water, as well as like a submarine device and a tank-like device, some other like crazy stuff. Franklin invented this way to stop waves. And, you could do the experiment yourself. I mean, I'm not recommending you do it, but just get some oil and dump it into the water, and in particular on a windy day. And the waves will just instantly die down as there's no longer any amount of friction. A good way to teach people what is, one of the causes of waves and currents. Okay, so now we have, I hope, a basic understanding in place of what went into Nikola Tesla's invention. And before I go into that, I will lastly state with the ancient pyramids found in Egypt. Granted, this sort of knowledge and this sort of contemplation is not as concrete as things known and produced in the modern centuries, but it is speculated that there was a gold top to the pyramids of Egypt, which, with such a tall object, this gold top, should there have been a great source of wind and water current creating electricity, this golden top could have potentially been used as a lightning rod, attracting power. And likewise, the object which the pyramids are made of, the sandstone, is an oddly powerful insulator. The sandstone is a great insulator, which is the primary material of the ancient pyramids located in Egypt. And then another aspect, again, difficult to know with great certainty, is that these pyramids had deep caverns beneath them. So it could be speculated that there, at one time, either through metal or water or some other method, there was a connecting object that went between the golden top of the pyramids and the deep caverns beneath them, attracting lightning and reducing the fires in the surrounding area. And this lightning that was attracted perhaps was somewhat stored in these sandstone structures, perhaps used as some kind of a powering source, or perhaps simply wasted and allowed to dissipate. That's more than anyone can imagine. But one should always note in their investigations of the pyramids that there's two great types of pyramids. There's the stepped pyramids, which are clearly made by our civilization. There's stepped pyramids all across the earth, which are made in human proportions, and clearly in the last 2,000 years or what have you. These are the stepped pyramids. And then you have other objects which are a little bit absurdly large, but the Great Pyramids found in ancient Egypt, which had an odd amount of precision and ratios which corresponded with the size of the earth, and likewise their objects were of just unnecessarily enormous size. So large that it could have required 50 humans to pull a single object, even using a series of ramps, when you can logically create small bricks and stack them. You can logically create small bricks. And this, of course, would always be your first thought process if you were to create a giant, if you were to try to create a giant structure. You would always start with small bricks, and then nobody in their right mind would ever say, what if we made gigantic bricks that we couldn't lift and then tried to build a tall structure with that? Nobody would ever think to do that, because it's stupid. It's the equivalent of creating a skyscraper by first building something that's impossible to move and then just trying to dump it into as a skyscraper, like stand it up. No one does that. You piece by piece. So the ancient pyramids located in Egypt, they're of like some immense size that's illogical and not replicated throughout the rest of the world whenever the rest of the humans created pyramids. Perfectly smooth or unusually smooth, whereas all our pyramids are stepped. And then lastly, undecorated, or the decorations have been removed. Whereas in the pyramids that we make, all the walls are filled with drawings, and we create symbols all over the place and communicative designs. In the ancient pyramids located in Egypt, there's simply no decorative forms whatsoever. There's no kind of there's just no drawings on the walls, just nothing. And the peoples of Egypt did create replica pyramids, but when they did it, because they're our size, they created smaller pyramids with doorways of our size in a stepped fashion, using smaller bricks that humans could lift and transport with ease. So there's a huge difference between the ancient pyramids of Egypt found in Egypt and the ones that are stepped pyramids, highly decorated, of proportions appropriate for creatures of our size and structure. So anyways, so the ancient pyramids of Egypt, they have caverns beneath them, and they had a metal object on top of them. And then you could imagine that there might have been at some point in time, there might have been a connecting source between these two. Now let's go into the Tesla towers. And this drawing is particularly difficult to find. You can find it in some copies of The Problem of Increasing Human Energy. And I'll just read this. Wisdom of the Lord, of understanding of knowledge, sacrifice on counsel of sorrow. Which I don't quite take. I don't profess to understand what that means. And then these elemental words are fire, light, water, fire, light, air, earth, darkness. Okay. However, these 6 pictures are a good representation of what a Tesla tower and this atom-looking device in the middle is a good representation of what a Tesla tower could look like. So a Tesla tower, in summation, a Tesla tower could have been these gigantic pyramid objects, or what Tesla did, he created like things that mimicked a Tesla coil that went up very high into the air. A Tesla tower is these gigantic pyramid objects, or Tesla coils, that go into the atmosphere, in particular where water vapor is creating friction at a very regular rate, which ultimately is mountaintops. You want to be on top of a mountain, and for some, I live in the mountains, and I understand that as the wind and air rises to the top of the mountains, as it crosses over, that's where your storm clouds, your greatest thunderstorms get created. So you might build a Tesla tower on top of a mountaintop, and then as the energy, I'll call it the positive energy that's created by the water friction and movement, gets amplified within the sky. These lightning rods that are of basically an unlimited size and unimaginable efficacy would pull the lightning aggressively away from the sky and down into the earth, like a battery, like a giant battery. So it would pull this energy that's stored up in every single thunderstorm that you see. Every cloud has this immense amount of positive energy. And if you created a lightning rod tall enough to touch the cloud and one low enough to reach the center of Earth, you would create a driving force more powerful, preventing the spikes or lightning that one sees today. So with these Tesla towers, you could potentially create a rod of this size, and then you could also capture this energy by utilizing a Tesla valve to slow down the flow and using a Tesla coil to store it. And if one thinks in such a way, then you could imagine a way of creating an infinite amount of energy for all of mankind, or all the earth, or like effectively if you had a bunch of these, like let's just say 6 of these as he drew in this picture for human understanding. If you had 6 of these in this picture, you could imagine the earth becoming a battery. Imagine if like lightning effectively stopped occurring or occurred only in remote locations. And imagine these Tesla coils absorbing all this sky energy at a consistent, constant rate, and then storing this energy in some effective manner. And then also he had some idea of transferring this energy via this circular path, which I don't quite understand, but perhaps there could be a way of easily transferring the energy once you get into like the space dimensions and so forth. So this is one concept that Nikola Tesla had for powering the earth, and it's just amazing. And he came upon this and also the solution for the electronic motor. He came upon this when he was envisioning the spinning of the earth around. He came upon this when he was envisioning the spinning of the earth around the sun. And he thought about how, like, we could sort of think about the moon a little bit, but like how if the earth never rotated as it spun around the sun, then one side would fry and the other side would freeze. And then if you have this spinning system of the earth, then there's a heat balance and an electrical balance on the earth, and yet there's no friction. There's no friction, which is created as the earth spins, yet absorbing the energy. And it's this sort of rotating around the sun while spinning and balancing its energy that Tesla used to power his imagination for both his sources of energy for mankind and also for his electronic motor. Now, let's go back into the quote, and with all this in mind, let's go ahead and read this quote again, and let's meditate as we do, and try to think of the mind of Nikola Tesla in 1900 AD, the turn of the new century, 100 years ago, and understanding the source of energy of Earth perhaps better than we do today. Modern science says the sun is the past, the earth is the present, The moon is the future. From an incandescent mass we've originated, and into a frozen mass we shall turn. Merciless is the law of nature, and rapidly and irresistibly we are drawn to our doom. Nikola Tesla, 1900 AD. Okay. All right, so powerful stuff, guys. Powerful stuff. Now, let's get into his thoughts on mankind and his thoughts on technology and politics, and how it contrasted with those of Albert Einstein. So, this quote is from The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, which I think is one of the... I haven't read everything by Tesla. I've kind of skimmed some things, I'll tell you, and watched interpretations by others. But I think The Problem of Increasing Human Energy is a fantastic read, and he basically describes the iPhone and how we will have a device that would use... The main description of the iPhone as opposed to the BlackBerry is that he noted in The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, if we were holding handheld devices which use mechanical buttons to be pushed down and up to represent our desires, that this mechanical friction would wear down and create excess wear and cost. And thus he says we'll have a mechanical device with a mechanical touchscreen or whatever that we would communicate with using only our fingers as a way of creating like effectual perpetual usability without wear and tear. And this is described in 1900 AD, The Problem of Increasing Human Energy. Now he also makes this drawing on the right, which I don't think I've gone over, which is his description of what he would like to see for mankind, or what is necessary for the human civilization. And in this drawing on the right, he shows that there is there are three paths forward. One path forward where to increase our power, we increase the number of men, the number of people upon the earth. So as we increase in population, there is naturally an increase in technological development as our human system communicates and transmits technology. Another way of increasing our human energy is to reduce the amount of retardation within man. He always uses the phrase retardation. So to reduce the amount of retardation in man, and so if we were to stay at the same size, reduce our retardation, maintain our rate of forward progress, then logically we would tip forward in such a way. And then lastly, if we accelerate our rate of forward progress while maintaining a consistent rate of retardation and a consistent size of mass, then we could also begin to tip forward and accelerate our technological discovery and our technological development. And these things are, I think, that they're kind of simple thought processes, elemental, basic understandings, but this is something that he was transmitting to the common public in a simple graph with some materials to further explain to boot. So in his thoughts, it's increasing the quantity of man, or the free time as well. This was so increasing the quantity of man, increasing our free time, our thoughts spent on innovation and technological change, or reducing the retardation of man, or the backwards movement of man. So those were his three thoughts in terms of how to increase and advance human energy or the human civilization. Now, how did this contrast with Einstein? And before I go into that, I'll just mention these are all included in a project I'm working on, Bitcoin1776.org, where I have a system which I believe will accelerate the organization of mankind. You can earn money in this system, but the ultimate function is to accelerate the progress of mankind through creating a kind of unique form of frictionless world governance that can scale infinitely, inspired by many great people: Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Swartz, Nikola Tesla, and also Benjamin Franklin, mostly, as well as Kennedy, Malcolm X, and Thomas Paine. So there's many great people who have tried to improve mankind. So and did it in great, wonderful ways. So let's talk about how his political thoughts and his conceptions differed from those of Benjamin Franklin, and differed from those of Albert Einstein. And it's exceedingly important to understand this when people discuss ancient figures of wisdom. So Einstein, in his research of nuclear energy, the relativity of space, the understanding of atoms, he states that when it comes to creating a great invention, that the most important thing is how long this invention endures. So he cites Newton as a man who lived for 40 years and was, or whatever, inventing for 20 years, and yet his time upon Earth, his 20 years of brain activity, helped us obtain solutions that are relevant, cited, and utilized 1,000 years into the future. And this is the legacy accomplishment of man. And as he was going, this is his justification for spending his time on relativity. And then in terms of nuclear energy and that sort of thinking, one of the reasons that Americans were not very focused on this concept was that there was no predictable path to harnessable nuclear energy for quite a while. It was known that you could hit atoms with other atoms and create energy, but it was only kind of by happenstance that it was discovered of the radioactive materials, in which once activated with one electronical unit, 2 electronical units would be produced, and they would decay, losing several electrons through the process, and thus create power, excess power. Before the radioactive decaying materials, 1 electron in created 1 electron out, but with radioactive materials, 1 electron in, 2 out. And then if you pile a bunch of these radioactive materials together, these decaying materials together, you can create a bomb where 1 electron in within milliseconds of time creates trillions of electrons out simultaneously, too fast for the earth to absorb it, thus creating explosions. So now there's always that, what is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of being able to explode big things? Which was always kind of a question. It wasn't really that nuclear power plants were perhaps envisioned, but nuclear power plants were quite the quickly accessible tool that nuclear bombs were quite understood as this became utilized. It was understood you could blow up cities with this, right? So through understanding the fundamental forces of nature, you could create materials that destroy thousands of lives, millions of years of progress in these cities, and eradicate civilizations or local communities. So ending war, not really, but trivializing bow and arrows and trivializing gunfights, I guess. So anyways, so in Einstein's viewpoint, you can understand his process. Newton, living and thinking for 20 years, creates and discovers fundamental, unchanging, unalterable discoveries that will benefit mankind for thousands of years to come, presumably. And likewise, Einstein spent his creative energies, and he was a very creative individual and independent individual. I do enjoy people who live quite independently. He spent his energies trying to understand this relativity of the atmosphere, as well as atoms, the fundamental makeup of atoms. And a large part of this in Einstein's materials was brought about by studying the meanderingness of rivers. Like, why do rivers not flow straight? Why do they meander along a path? So that was his expression of going into nature, questioning unusual. You would assume logically rivers to flow straight, path of least resistance, and then this questioning approach of trying to understand why rivers meander was part of why he went on to discover relativity. And some other, to briefly address Einstein, he was also factoring the speed of light. I forget what he did to kind of stimulate the discovery into the speed of light. I think it was the monitoring of stars, and we can ignore this, but the monitoring of stars and looking at light transfer, and either studying eclipses or studying as stars pass between other stars and how long it took to reach the Earth to estimate the speed of light from a known source. I think it was something like that he used to get these estimations for the speed of light. But it's quite a difficult process, since we don't really have tools that can easily determine the speed of light. Yet, by looking at things incredibly far away, where it takes maybe 8 minutes for the sun's light to reach Earth, but looking at things that are thousands and thousands of years away, and if you know that's probably not. Yeah, maybe this was part of it, or it was the hues of light, perhaps. But if you know that it crosses an object at a particular point, because you know the rotations of objects, and then how long does it take for that to reach Earth? I'm not sure if that's how he did it, but that'll be my statement there. And then another thing that Einstein, there was something else that's, okay. So whatever these people make these discoveries, you always have to contemplate what is the practical or normal assertion by man. So with Benjamin Franklin's time, I will presume that the normal assertion by man was that lightning was punishment from God for or a deity, Zeus, in Athens, but lightning was punishment from a deity for living poorly or not sacrificing enough goats or what have you was this cause and source of lightning, whereas Franklin asserted that it's a understandable scientific phenomenon. And in the times of Einstein, the counterpoint against relative space and time, which asserts that time is an expanding force and space is an expanding force, the counterpoint, or the Newtonian, I believe it's Newtonian understanding of Earth and assertion upon Earth for his calculations, was that space was a box, that we were all birthed within a box, that space was not expanding, that therefore if you can confine all of matter within a box with boundaries, then you can apply Newtonian calculations to determine the spin and rotation of objects, which were found to not be as accurate as they should be, should our assertion of the box equation have been accurate. And it's partly from trying to correct these equations that Einstein came up with the concept of relative space, relative time. Okay, now when it comes to politics, and then I'll work backwards into Benjamin Franklin. When it comes to politics, you have I'll just kind of scroll through this a little bit. When it comes to politics, you have two incredibly different viewpoints held between Benjamin Franklin and that of Einstein. So in Einstein's version of politics, which is frankly quite atrocious. In Einstein's version of politics, he asserted that there's two forms of people. One group of people which are destined to be leaders and inventors, the imaginative sort of people like himself and other famous inventors, and the other group which are the bees or the sheep upon earth, which as he would assert have little to no importance. And he writes all these crazy, monstrous notions. If you want to read Einstein's views on politics, awful stuff, really. But you have to understand where he's coming from, which is from the Platonian or Plato mindset, which the Republic is not Socrates' ideas and writings. Plato ascribes them to Socrates. They are clearly Plato's ideas, which he claims are Socrates' ideas. That is inaccurate. You can read Karl Popper's book explaining this deception upon the public. And Aristotle has a similar mindset. Aristotle, Plato, Einstein, and a lot of people all have this kind of similar mindset when it comes to what is man, how is the beast of man to function. And in this mindset, you have some people born, I'll say, perhaps developed, but the generic assertion is that they're born with these gifts. That you have some people born of intelligence, born of the free-thinking type, born to invent, born to lead, the philosopher kings, as used in the Republic, the masters, as Aristotle would say, and then you have the slaves, and which are all the sheep or the followers, and these kind of things are loosely accurate describing society. With the main question is if it's a developed process, which is what I would assert, as opposed to an innate gift or lack of gift, which I would absolutely never agree with. That's my beliefs, which side with Nikola and Franklin. So like in Aristotle's writing on politics, he says that a master could never become a slave, because a master would perpetually revolt and express himself in such a way that he would never allow himself to be brought down into slavery. I disagree with that. But so Einstein writes in Politics that summarizing for general publics, Einstein writes that the masters of Earth, or the thinkers of Earth, should give away money to the slaves of Earth and express great pity upon them, the same way that you would treat your dogs, the same way that you would treat a dog. And it's his assertions is that when you have these kind of UBI, and I'm not anti-UBI, I want to be very clear about that. I'm not against it, but this notion of the like free lunch, the trough that the sheep are led to feed out of, the same way that you feed your dog a sufficient food and water so that he can live and barely function, or whatever it might be. You know, if it was the conception that dogs could go on and, you know, make spears and make pyramids or whatever, if they were given, you know, an amplified existence. But the same way that you kind of pity your dogs and animals and pets, this is how the leaders of the world should pity the affairs of basic man. And this sort of ruling, this sort of like justification for ruling over common man and dominating them and ignoring like the anti-democratic concepts of this are quite monstrous in my view. But it's very common, in particular in the continental areas of Europe. This is sort of like some partial inspirations for Adolf Hitler's work of eradicating portions of mankind. And then it's also, you can see this in the United Nations and some of the Swiss organizations, where all Swiss organizations, to be honest, where they assert that effectively they are of a different species, and therefore it's kind of not racism when they don't like to mingle or crossbreed with other humans beneath the Alps, beneath their concern of well-being. And instead these humans are to be pitied and taught, led like sheep, and scare, you lead sheep by building fires or something, or barking. A dog barks around the sheep, scaring them in a particular direction like a flock. So this is how you're supposed to command and rule over Earth. And Einstein agreed with that and promoted that in the American public. I'm not sure if he referred to it as communism, but whatever. This was his initial this was his fundamental thesis of how mankind and civilization was to be run. Further, he says that the elites of the world should not allow the sheeps or the common people to speak their language, that you should have two different languages. And he laments about the deterioration of Latin, which was primarily brought about in America, but perhaps it was a transitional process regardless. And so at one time, all the great texts, Euclid's Mathematics and some other great texts, largely never changed. So up until I'll just say 1700 AD, up until 1700 AD, if you wanted to study science, if you wanted to study math, the fundamental processes of Earth, you would use texts that were written in 0 AD. You would use texts that were written in 0 AD in a forgotten language such as Latin. And then whenever the educated community spoke with one another, they would speak in Latin. And this is why a dead language now. But so the intelligent or cultured people would read books written in 0 AD, communicate with one another using Latin, and in such a way they could intermingle within the common folk without the common folk ever knowing what they're talking about, without the common folk having regular access to their materials. And then around 1700 AD, around this time period, is where substantial new discoveries were getting created, and ancient books were translated into common languages such as English, and then it became normalized for the intelligent people of the world to continue their talk in English or German, as opposed to continuing this Latin process. And once you normalize intelligent people speaking in English, speaking in German, then you start to educate a wider audience, yet at the same time, as seen in like the social medias, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, when you start to engage a wider audience in complicated scientific thoughts, then you have a thing where this audience can kind of rebel or become anti-science. Like, and I don't mean anti-science in the way that it's promoted today, where if you don't want a vaccine, you're anti-science or something like that. But I mean, for example, Benjamin Franklin as a simple example. It's quite possible that he was branded as a heretic for understanding the concept of a lightning rod and defying the will of the gods or God. So this kind of branding innovators as heretics, like Elon Musk, who I consider a wonderful innovator and accelerator of human energy, and increasing the number of lives that are saved through preventing of auto accidents, I consider a very important invention. And I think he mimics Franklin and Tesla in his concepts on Earth as well. Regardless, a lot of people become off-put or scared by or promote this "you need to be scared of" these inventive, creative people such as Elon Musk. Had he only communicated his ideas in Latin, then a common public could never learn what his true plans were. And so this kind of secretive nature, like Elon, I'm positive, has a concept as frankly eliminating politics on Earth in subsequently warfare and disagreement effectively. He doesn't share all of his ideas to everyone because of the pushback he'll get, his cries of hereticism. So the sheep become scared, and rebel, right? So there is the. I will acknowledge that many people operate in stadiums and so forth, but I don't think it's an innate requirement of their being. I think it's just a simplistic process for avoiding danger and harm to follow the crowd in areas in which you're less informed. Knowing what's poisonous and not poisonous, I have put no research into beyond grocery store means not poisonous. And I don't, frankly, experiment with wild plants and animals with frequency. So anyways, so that kind of summarizes. Oh, and lastly, with Einstein, he says that the optimal political solution, of course, this is designed in the times of Adolf Hitler, in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, perhaps, and the warfare with Russia. A lot of people overemphasize the threat of Adolf Hitler. There is a substantial threat of Russia that is the reason that Adolf Hitler, the empowerment of Germany was tolerated, was to combat the threat of the Russian movement. So anyways, Einstein proposes the idea that there should be 3 men elected to a centralized government. 1 man would be like the President of the United States, 1 man the President of England, and 1 man the President of Russia. These 3 people would have access to nuclear bombs, and they would be the only 3 people with access to nuclear bombs, and they would subsequently unite all of the rest of the Earth, and all those who disagreed would be immediately annihilated with nuclear bombs. Immediately annihilated with nuclear bombs. And you can understand how Hitler, or Adolf, Hitler, you can understand how Hitler, who had similar thoughts of gathering a group of people, having them agree to like some better ideology, and then as opposed to conversing, working with, accepting those who disagree, you kill them all. You simply kill them all. And this comes from the mentality that people are born into their thoughts and position. This comes from ultimately a racial mentality, which Einstein shared. A classification. Of course, he was Jewish, and he promoted Jewish superiority, whereas Adolf promoted Anglican or white superiority. But in either case, it comes from a mentality of racial superiority or religious, but largely racial superiority over all those of other races. And in centralized Europe, Germany, Switzerland, some of the areas surrounding Europe, these concepts continue still today. They are very, very, very widespread, largely in Central Europe. And it's just something that Americans and English folk and others of the sheep, as they might call us, that the sheep should become aware of. That these concepts of pitying people and giving them presents don't come out of a position of equality, but of one of innate superiority to a lower class species, the same as we feed birds and dogs and squirrels and so forth. So, oddly, what I would consider oddly, Einstein promoted this concept of racial superiority with Jewish people, I would assume, being at the top, as he was, proudly supporting the Jewish causes. So now, how does this play into technological development? So the way that this translates into technological development is that Einstein, he sought to create technologies that had no practical function or service to mankind. As he was discovering relativity of the universe, which of course is exceedingly important, but as he's discovering relativity of the universe, he had no concept that this would by any means benefit practical man. And Tesla condemned this. Tesla was very much against Einstein's effective waste of his intellectual prowess upon ideas that did not benefit mankind. But in Einstein's perspective, mankind was a wasted force, a wasted conception. Mankind was subhuman, and thus benefiting them is like sending your dogs to school so that they could like learn to carry a spear or something like this. It's kind of a waste of effort, and so that's why Einstein innately rejected the concept of practical invention, things that could benefit people. Now Franklin, on the other hand, excelled in practical invention. He was incredibly focused in practical invention. He created all these things. I'll just scroll through this as we're talking here. He created all these things. Here, I'll go ahead and say, this is my website if you're interested in checking out. You can sign up for this newsletter here and, get some coins, learn about some other things of similar concepts that I'm talking about. I do appreciate everyone who signs up. And we could try to amplify our own human energy to create a smarter world faster than the current progress. Okay, yeah, feel free to visit bitcoin1776.org. Okay, so now Franklin, when he was inventing, a humongous focus was practicality. All of his focus, largely, was practicality. How could we turn scientific understandings into the benefit of man? And so, so in his thing, Franklin would always, he created like the Franklin stove, which was a better way of heating a home. He created flippers for swimming through water. He discovered the flowing of the ocean currents so that boats could be more easily navigated upon the Atlantics. And then when it came into his political endeavors, his concepts were always how to empower man through a junto system and through the 13 virtues. And all of these concepts are about taking average people, and making them better people. Here, I have the 13 virtues. I'll go over it a different time, but you can read these at your leisure right now. So all of these concepts were about making people stronger, or giving them simple, basic tools to allow them to make themselves stronger. If this was translated into the dog world, this would be like helping one dog learn to carry a spear and become a ruler over dogs, and then introducing him to a pack of dogs so that the other dogs could learn from him. So rather than feeding them a minimal substance, you take a power dog and you allow this pack leader or this power dog to amplify his discoveries with more of the species. Thus, in the 13 virtues, you power yourself, and in the junto system, you network into groups of people to power each other. So, with Franklin's inventions, a big part was taking away this, removing away this Latin process, moving away from these kind of useless pathways of knowledge, such as learning English, learning math, or whatever. And it was always how to apply them, how to apply these things, how to apply math to make life better, how to apply English to teach and communicate better. That was his concepts. Scientific understanding without human benefit was the waste, or a waste of energy. And it's Nikola Tesla, the immigrant, who came to America in order to have increased opportunities and expanded industrial environment. Is Nikola Tesla, who continued this process, who, with all of his scientific thoughts and discoveries, even though some of his concepts around atoms and so forth were proven different by Albert Einstein, but it's Nikola Tesla who helped create all these electronic motors that we use in practically every product you have in your home. You might have 100 electronic motors in your home. The alternating currents of energy, the use of hydropower, all of these radio waves, the transmission, the written books and works that went on to inspire others to create iPhone type systems written about in the problem of creating human energy in 1900 AD. These things inspired people that weren't created for 100 years later. So Nikola Tesla was always focused on practical invention, benefit to man. And then you can You can likewise see this in the work of Elon Musk, whereas he could be working on Lockheed Martin and like these kind of warfare technologies, which sort of trickle down to regular people, or he could be working in one-off rockets that have no benefit to people who outside of government. Yet he focuses on commercialized rockets where regular humans can purchase a ticket for $100,000 or whatever it might end up costing, but where regular humans can visit space with some outlay of money. Regular humans are protected with exceptionally safe vehicles. Regular humans reduce the amount of pollutions that they inhale through the burning of oil within these congested cities, as it's impossible to filtrate all the smog, and it's also exceedingly difficult to quantify the amount of soot inhaled and poisoning the body as we are today, or creating dirt upon the buildings that are driven past. So Elon Musk furthers this empowerment of regular people in my mind. And then kind of lastly, you have this reflected in their political ideals. Franklin, Tesla, Musk. Well, I don't know about Musk's political ideals, to be honest with you. But Franklin and Tesla both exemplified a communicative political ideal. Yeah, Musk does this, always seeking to communicate to a wide audience via social media on Twitter and engaging small investors and promoting their thoughts in addition to those of the big bank or whatever you might say, the big investing groups. Communicative investing. So it's so Tesla, Franklin, and Musk reflect this by engaging wide communities, inspiring wide communities, while bettering many lives across the earth, the human earth. Whereas some others, but in particular, I'm just referencing Albert Einstein, but there's several others who engaged in a similar political philosophy, whereas there's others who see no benefit to easing the lives of common man unless it can be utilized to rule over them. And when it comes to political discourse, they might envision a world where common man speaks a different language and could never hope to participate, where common man have joke election, banana republics, or joke elections and joke governments that are dominated by militaristic forces sent and excessive taxation, dominated by military forces and excess taxation, destroying their inherent ability to create improvement and benefit their own civilizations. And you see this in oppressive regimes or oppressive times, and of course, America has been at times that oppressive regime, and many governments have been that oppressive regime. The Swiss government, in particular, is more oppressive than others, I believe, to the European people. But the difference with American and Swiss systems is that a Swiss system, all the upper class people who speak their own language and their own culture all live together in a very isolated area where tourism and travel is discouraged. Of course you can, and if you go there, frankly speaking, you're going to see a picturesque Santa village of prosperity, of calmness, of wealth beyond measure, beyond anything a lower class human like those of America, France, Spain, and Germany, anything that the lower class humans could imagine. You'll see shop after shop specializing in $1,000 wines, $1,000 watches, $1,000 luxury goods, brand new cars on every street with no breakdowns, ample room, small populations. The capital of Switzerland has about 300,000 people in it, capital of Bern. But you also see a very aggressive anti-inclusivity. I won't go into it in this video, but there's monuments depicting certain peoples as barbarians who eat children. And this is to remind, and in the zoo of Switzerland, this is one of the more clear-cut examples. Now, some of this is true, but they talk about how the best way to help bears is to eliminate all the competition of bears. So by having only 1 or 2 bears, they're able to thrive over a larger environment, as opposed to a traditional zoo, which might keep a bear in a very small cage and stack bear on top of bear. But again, this is represented by Adolf, who talked about Livingstrom and the need to eliminate people in order to acquire more space. And you can see this in the zoo of the bear exhibits, where they eliminate the other animals in order to give the bears more space. Whereas technological inclusive inventors such as Musk, Franklin, and Tesla, they empowered people so that they were able to amplify their output. And thus there is no need for a Thanos to come along and issue a snap and eliminate half of the population. Instead, you have great, wonderful inventors come along and double the production of food, double the feeding of the wild animals, digging tunnels to minimize the graziness of the human civilization upon Earth. There could be a future where many people on Earth live underground for long periods of time, which is largely no different than living in a house, yet it allows the wild animals to graze and roam more freely. I could certainly imagine that happening. So anyways, that's kind of a deep dive into some of the scientific thought processes most accurately reflected and expressed by Nikola Tesla as far as I'm concerned, but the contrast between old Europe and the New World. For English European descendants, obviously Chinese, Russia, and Africa have their own political ideologies, but for our purpose, old Europe and the New World, Socrates also shared this inclusive nature. Jesus shared this inclusive nature, but Aristotle, Plato, Einstein, Adolf, they did not share this concept of inclusivity of people with as a singular common driving force. And this is a big side note. This is a big part why I don't support notions of IQ or genetic difference. Obviously, there are genetic differences in humans, but I think they are exceedingly trivial compared to what we could become. I think they're exceedingly trivial compared to what we could become. And one should think instead of how can we most exactly reproduce the master race, one should consider how can we amplify or allow all those who want to be amplified. How can we amplify the common speech? How can we amplify everyone? How can we amplify everyone and include everyone with minimal friction? And that's part of Bitcoin 1776. And if you would like to participate, it is a paid system. It's my money. I don't have investors. but I do have some money from investing in Bitcoin and Tesla. And I'm using an allocation of that to stimulate a world government and to reduce friction and amplify the joy of Earth. So if you'd like to support that process, I probably need about 150 more signups, frankly, before I'm able to get my system off the ground and really implemented. But if you'd like to sign up, go to bitcoin1776.org. A brief description of how the process works. It's a version of a Bitcoin blockchain type of system where I have control over 550,000 coins, and very few coins are mined each year, are inflated each year. And with these 550,000 coins, I distribute them for people who who will engage in these meetings. And these meetings were inspired by, in my system was most directly inspired by Benjamin Franklin, Aaron Swartz, Thomas Jefferson, but also the ideas of Malcolm X, Thomas Paine, and Kennedy. And as it applies for Kennedy, and likewise Nikola Tesla, in the quote above, rapidly and irresistibly we're drawn to our doom. Merciless is the law of nature. In the quote above, the concept is that the conflicts between man are trivial compared to the coming conflict of nature. And I think Kennedy helped exemplify that in his quote-unquote space race, but the acquisition of two-planet systems, humans living on two planets and living in space, Kennedy, I think, quite understood the need to unify man against the coming horror of the frozen waste that eventually befalls all man when the next comet or the next ice age is upon us. And Malcolm X, I think, represents one of the most engaging individuals in terms of evolving his rapid evolution of thought. Initially, he started off as a racial isolationist, again, reflective of Einstein and Adolf. And then after his trip to Mecca, he grew into a person who believed that beyond race, there were better ways to unite all of mankind, in a common goal of empowering man. And subsequently, he was murdered shortly thereafter with guns and firebombs. And Thomas Paine, his work of discussing the need, the fundamental need to see all man as independent people. And his work on economics is really quite fascinating, and the rights of man. But in my system, people meet into groups of 8, elect 2 representatives. These 2 representatives, after four groups have joined up, these 2 representatives form a new group of 8, and so on and so forth. And in this way, you can use about 7 layers of 7 election cycles, all happening after 1 hour. You meet with 8 people. You discuss 2 things in these meetings. What good thing are you doing for yourself? How are you improving your own life? And how are you improving your community or society? So those are the 2 questions that are asked of you. And you talk about these for about 5 minutes each, and some other subjects as necessary. And you go around the room, and then after 1 hour, there is after a caucus of 1 hour, a discussion of 1 hour, there is an election where 2 of the best contributors are sent on to create the new level of government. And in this election process, there's a little bit of a dice roll that eliminates 25% of the candidates automatically by default without any control of human influence. But this dice roll prevents demagogues from asserting the throne. You couldn't have like a Trump, a Hillary, a Pharaoh trying to only promote themselves to the top level of government, because this dice roll would systematically eliminate the possibility of one candidate forcing their way to the top, promoting the concept of discussing ideas and things that we all agree on and don't become solely beneficial to one man or person, one human. So in my system, 8 people get together, elect 2 representatives between the 8 who from their own group who best represent and express the ideas of improving their own life and improving mankind. These persons form a new group, and the process escalates and continues until you have the top 8 people who kind of form this Council of Franklins. And then throughout this process, in the tax system of mine, I take these 550,000 coins that I inherit initially, and I take these coins and I pay all the people who vote. And so initially for my test process, once I get about probably 200 signups, or I'll try it sooner, but it'll probably take 200 signups before I get going. In my test process, I'm paying everyone $30 to participate for 1 hour. And then if you win the election, you get paid $140. And then if you win the second level election, then you get paid $400 for participating in terms of coin value. And so I give you these coins. I have a blanket agreement to repurchase coins at a minimum value, and you sell these coins back to me. And that's the way I acquire coins. I don't keep any of these coins. I give them all away through this process. And then you can choose to sell them back to me, or you can choose to retain them and see if they increase in value as like more people, if the process grows potentially. And I believe that this system could work as a layered form of government to be incorporated all over the earth as a replacement for some of the educational systems which I think have become ineffectual. The developmental systems, which I don't think have properly focused on practical knowledge and things that benefit man directly. So and likewise to bridge social boundaries. Even though an initial group of 8 might only consist of Muslims, and the second group of 8 you'd naturally have 2 Muslims, 2 Christian, 2 Jew, 2 atheist, all intermingled in equal proportion in this second group, if in this situation they were sectioned off by religion. But you could have people sectioned off for whatever classification they call themselves whatsoever. And in such a way, everyone's represented by 2 people, or each group's represented by 2 people. So if you like the idea of accelerating human progress, if you believe that this could be of some benefit to you, or if you simply want to get or earn $30 to $150 for 1 hour of your time, possibly $400 if you win the second level, then you can come sign up with my progress, my system, www.bitcoin1776.org. And in mine, unlike regular Bitcoin, there are exactly 17.76 million coins as opposed to 21 million. Thus, it's a more scarce coin than any of the Bitcoin forks that I'm aware of, and partly derivative of the name Bitcoin 1776, 17.76 million. And virtually all the coins are the coins that I have control of and will be produced in the future via the mining process. 98% are going to be given away for those who choose to participate in our political, educational, world government process for the benefit of man. And if you want to join in on that, feel free to do so, and I would welcome your presence. Talk to you later. Have a good one. Hope you liked it. I know that was exceedingly long. A lot of crazy stuff. Stop, pause, come back. There you go. Talks. Ciao.